Our module, the Eng1501, is Introduction to Literature. I trust that we all know what literature is, and we all understand how literature is studied, particularly at university level. So before I even get into the intricacies of literature, I'll just broadly introduce the subject, broadly. Then we will later come to specifics. So every language that is spoken has got its own literature. So you'd understand that when we say literature, we're talking about what we read in the form of novels, plays, poems, sometimes stories. But the opposite of literature is orature. So there are two words here, literature and orature. So you are not going to be worried about orature. Why are you not worried about orature? Because you are not dealing with the oral part, but you'll understand that the oral influences the written. So what we call literature is what was meant to be performed orally. So whether you talk about an African setting, we have got our own literature that is based on oracy or orature. These are the stories that our grandmothers, our grandfathers possibly would tell us around a fireplace. Those of you who could have possibly grown up with the elderly, those who were storytellers. Then if you grew up possibly in the city, you also noticed that there were television programs or radio programs where these stories were told from one generation to the other. But you see now in Africa, we did not have much of literature written. All our literature was spoken, and few of it has been transcribed or translated into the written mode. But we acknowledge that within the African literature, there is quite a lot that constituted poetry, perhaps constituted short stories. Then we move to the European context. Now, in the European context, we have, for example, writers, pronounced writers, who have decided to present, of course, what started as orator in their own context, and it has become literature. So you'd notice that there is poetry, deep poetry, that has been written in various eras of the European epoch or history. You'll understand the Elizabethan era. You get the poetry of the Elizabethan era. Then you will get, obviously, some poets, maybe from America. You get poems from Asia. You get poems from Europe. We're not only looking at Europe, we broadly look at generally the entire globe. So this concept of literature is meant to be an oral activity. So when we look at, for example, poetry, we're expecting people to understand that a poem is meant to be performed. That is why when you're reading through a poem, you realize that you have got to understand the sounds, how it feels, the rhythm. So it's not only what you see in the written print. If you were reading a play, if it is drama, you are expecting a performance. So most of those words, those stage directions, even the costumes that are described there, if it is a written play, you would appreciate that it is portraying what is supposed to be acted on stage. Now, if it is a short story, you'll also notice that there is a narrative obviously a moral that follows this story. These stories were told so that they could develop a moral, or they could teach the younger generation positive moral values. So the whole concept of literature, besides coming to analyze it and just say this is diction, this is style, this is tone, we need to understand that literature is culture. We all have literature, right? So hence, when we get into this module, we'll be looking at language being used in literature. So in other words, one definition of literature is that it is language in action. Literature is language in action. Now, what is the purpose of this language in action? It is there to influence. It is there to entertain the reader, sometimes to inform the reader in a powerful and emotive way. Therefore, literature is meant to be enjoyed. And I trust that you will enjoy this module, or you have been enjoying this module so far with the few aspects of literature that you have been presented with. With those few remarks that I have given, I would want to perhaps move to what I would call introduction and expectations. So I have set out the introduction of the subject, and I see that there is quite a number of you on the site, but it will be fine if I got a hand, maybe 2 or 3 hands, just to get the general inclination towards this module. How do you view this module, right? What are your expectations here? What are your challenges? So that when I'm planning the future workshops, when I say workshop, what you present here is what we assign each other in a later, for a later date. Suppose you say, look, in our discussions, can we include the following? Then when you mention it here, I will include it in my planning. And then next time, or even during this very discussion, if we have enough time, we're going to deliberate on every aspect that present challenges to you. I don't want to keep on planning here and then coming with what I've planned and teaching. I've already indicated that I do not function as an educator or a teacher. I'm just a facilitator, and I'm bringing you together. So, but of course, I will open this forum now to hands, and then I'll ask you possibly just a brief introduction, then state what your experiences so far are in the module. What is it that you are finding challenging? What is it that you find positive and you are coping with? And then how do you want us now to intervene and assist you? Take note that our focus cannot be on teaching specific assignment concepts. I know most of us would just want to do an assignment and possibly get a mark out of that assignment, which is fine. We can try in our deliberations to share ideas and skills, but our focus is not going to be on spoon feeding each other on assignment writing. Our focus is on developing our skills as people that can read and respond to a piece of writing. Remember now, your focus at this level is to respond to a piece of writing called literature, to interpret it, to say, I read this novel, but my interpretation of this novel is as follows. You'd notice that literature has subjectivity. And when I'm saying subjectivity, we never have a common memo or a common point of departure and conclusion where we say this is how, this is how we do it. No, we can approach a poem, for example, from different angles. We can understand it differently. So it's art. let me put it in other words, literature is art. And when I'm saying art, it depends now on the person that is reading and interpreting the text. So your art plays a role now here in this discussion, and we want to be together today to take it from there. Okay, I may take hands now and ask each one, or some of you, to just introduce yourselves and set out your expectations and possibly what you find as gray areas in the module that you want us to project on as we proceed. Thank you. I'm giving the floor to a few hands. I'll take about 5 or 6. Then I'll be making notes of what each one of you says. You're welcome to raise your hand and share your perspectives. Okay, while you are preparing to give me the comment, and now I'm now going to look at our teaching approach. And I like I've indicated, at this point, our teaching approach is more of a facilitation. I've already hinted that when we facilitate, we simply coordinate. We simply bring people together like I'm doing here. So if you are not going to communicate or share something, then it's slightly going to present a small challenge there, because I might be talking something which you have not asked for, or I might be talking to somebody who perhaps doesn't understand what I'm even talking about. Can I, at this point, take the lead in coordinating you? Allow me to allow you to talk. Just say something, even a greeting. That is still fine. Nonkulego, I'm listening, Sindane.
Greetings, sir. I've just joined. Tabitha just sent me a link. I've been attending so many Teams sessions. So far, I haven't grabbed anything. I think maybe it's because they are discussing academic writing. And I am looking for maybe teaching maybe how to analyze a poem, how to analyze a story, how to analyze a discourse. So with regard to what Tabitha was saying, I think maybe if we can do the what devices? I don't.
Yeah, you're using the right words. Yes. Is it you want literary devices, poetic devices?
Yes, because quoting, like when the question comes, code a phrase, code a sentence to prove your answer, that is right or wrong. Yeah, I struggle there very much.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. I hear you.
And with regard to essays for maybe a novel, maybe the structure, how to write, and maybe teach us how not to lose facts. When we are writing, we always lose facts. I don't know how, maybe it's me. So I don't understand why I always lose facts. And I will maybe say in my mind, okay, I'll write this and this and this. But the minute I put the pen down and start writing, I lose everything.
Yeah. I understand what you're talking about. I think on that one of losing points, especially if you're in an exam, it's very common. A quick tip there, you know how your brain works. Your brain will quickly bring in facts and then process them and then discuss them. So as long as you do what is called planning or a mind map, you must allow yourself, say maybe you're writing an essay, allow yourself 10 minutes of just brainstorming. You just think quickly, whatever comes to your mind, you write. Whatever comes to your mind, you write. Then after that, you start organizing what was in your mind. That's the first point of call. Other than just taking a pen and starting to write, that presents challenges. But I hear you there. I hope, okay, thank you. Because you have mentioned poetry, right? We will start from there, and then we will discuss. But remember, my approach here is not to spoon feed. My approach here is to begin a process of dialogue and engagement. So what I'm going to ask now, I want you to take a piece of paper in the next 2 minutes, wherever you are, because I'm on this slide here that says poetry definition and tools of analysis. Now I'm going to start on this one. So for today, we're just going to take poetry. Then we will, of course, take one or two examples of poems, and then do maybe an analysis. But I'm not going to look at very long poems. I'll just tell you specific poetic features that you're going to be identifying, or maybe I'll just be general. Let me be general in my beginning. Let me not even start by pinpointing you to a specific poem, right? Listen, what I want you to do now, you're going to write down and say poetry definition. What is a poem? I want that definition first. Then you must tell me how you analyze any poem. It's like you must have a lens from where you do your analysis. Yes, there is also other genres. When I'm saying genre, I mean a type of literature. So you're going to have a short story. That's a genre on its own. Other people specialize in just writing short stories. I'm sure you have heard some people called short story writers. Others are called novelists. Others are called dramatists. Others are called poets. Right. So we want to start from there now. We will say poetry. You may write that down. And then you say definition. What is a poem? Then from there, you're going to say in that poem, what are the tools of analysis? When I'm saying tools of analysis, you will tell me now what you use. Then I will take it from there. I'm allowing you 5 minutes to engage in that task. It's 1842 now. I'll be back at 1847. Do what you can do. Then you will notice when I come back to you, I'll bring my feedback. And then from there, you will ask questions. That is how we are going to develop before I even start lecturing. So what I'll do for now, I will unshare this slide. I hope you have written the focus poetry definition and tools of analysis. Right. You may start. Define it. I would like to check if somebody wants to share their definition.
It can be defined as a piece of writing in which words are organized in a particular manner to express a particular idea.
Yeah, a piece of writing, I do agree with you, but I'm missing you there. Would you come closer to the mic? Oh, okay, I got it, a piece of writing. We obviously with a central theme or a central idea, and that piece of writing uses poetic features. But there are many definitions that you could have thought about. You could have said it is a patterned response to life. You know, there are many definitions of poetry. It can't be one. And then also no, then there are different types of poetry. So when we are saying types of poetry here, you'll notice here that I have just selected two poems, right? So because it's poetry, remember I said these poems were meant to be recited. You will remember some of these poems from our knowledge, some of them, they came as songs. You know, do you know that Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, How I Wonder What You Are? It's a poem. At the same time, it's a song. So when you look at Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, you know, you can start looking at it as a poem and you can start analyzing it. So you are just looking at the beauty of language. maybe you could have defined that poem as the beauty of expression, right? So you could say poetry is the beauty of expression. Beauty, I'm just going to write that definition there. Beauty of expression. You know, we want to believe that there is great language use. You know, there is that wonderful ability to use language in peculiar ways. Right. I mean, I don't know what definition you could have written, but I like this one. Or somebody could say poetry is a form of writing, a form of writing that has rhyme, rhythm, and imagery. These are my definitions. Must remember, I'm not taking them anywhere. This is how I view poetry. This is my analysis of poetry. I could say it's a patent response, to life, to life. Right. This definition comes from one of the renowned poets that is called Matthew Arnold. These are the this is Matthew. If you read there, you'll get an author called Matthew Arnold, who also wants to call poetry a criticism of life. Right. You can also call it a criticism of life. Hey, there are too many definitions of poetry. We're not going to finish them. Okay, so you'll notice now that there are different types of poems. So we grade them. So you'll have what you call the free verse, poetry. Then you can have what is called rhymed or rhymed poetry. So this poem contains rhyme, right? Others are called blank verse. So you need to find out what all these categories are, right? You'd say if it's free verse, for example, you know, it just writes. It just writes. It's not controlled. So in other words, that poem is not controlled by any issues of syllables and rhyme. So this poem, sometimes the sentences are long, sometimes they are short, and sometimes this free verse poem has got what we call run-on lines. Right, if you remember, it run-on lines. Run-on lines. Right, where you notice that from one stanza to the next stanza, you know, there's a line there that is not complete. It's completed in the next stanza. We'll talk about all those at a later stage. So that is free verse. It just, the poet is just writing. And most of these poets are African poets. Most of them, generally, they are the ones that use free verse poetry. Then there's poem that has got rhyme, right? So rhymed poetry, the one that will end with a rhyme at the end. You know, look at that poem, you'd see that at the end, there are words that are rhyming, particularly Shakespeare. Right, Shakespeare's poetry will certainly play with rhyme. Can you see that? I'm just going to try and highlight those words that seem to rhyme at the end. Can you see that the word day and the word may are rhyming there? Can you also see that the word, let's see, there is date there. You can look at, if you see date here, you can see that the last part of temperate, age, rate, there's a rhyme there. Okay. So when I'm saying rhymed poetry, I'm looking at these endings that tend to rhyme. But at the same time, this rhyming part of poetry uses what you're going to call a alliteration. Alliteration, by spelling the alliteration. Right. I'm sure you have learned that all these things are sound. The alliteration is a form of a rhyme and a sound. So in other words, in alliteration, you will have what you would call assonance. See, now I'm teaching now and I mustn't do this. You should be telling me. Assonance and consonance. Assonance and consonance. Right. The next question is, what is assonance and what is consonance? Right. Here, you'll see now the difference. Some poets would play with this sound that tends to rhyme. So when you are doing assonance, you are repeating a vowel. Repetition of a vowel in close succession. Right. So you'd find that a certain vowel is repeated. Remember, vowels are R, A, E, O, U. A, whether it's a diphthong, etc. But you just remember that there's going to be a vowel sound repeated. Whereas consonance here is going to be a repetition of consonants. You know, in the alphabet, M, for example, is a consonant. That one. P is a consonant. Right. You might hear a poet saying, "My much missed mother." My much missed mother. You see, ma is being repeated there. Okay, so that is rhymed poetry. But at the end, you realize that the poet might also be doing that. That is rhymed poetry. Then blank verse. You must find time to study all these different genres of poems so that you can appreciate them better. So with blank verse, you'd notice that the blank verse, the poem has got same number of syllables in a line, but there's no rhyme, right? Same number of syllables in a line, but there is no end rhyme. Right. So there might be an internal rhyme. When I'm saying an internal rhyme, these are words that give you that sound that is the same sound. Okay, that is just basic. So what I want you to do now is to go and just read about different types of poems. But I said most African poets they are just going to rely on what we call free verse. Here is one delay. You might be asked to analyze a poem written by one delay. Right? I asked you about tools of analysis, and I trust that in what you wrote there as tools of analysis is what I'm going to mention here, and you will also somehow agree with me that my tools of analysis of poetry are what you have already identified. You know, we tend to use what we call a mnemonic. Sure, you know the meaning of the word mnemonic. So mnemonic is something that will just help you to remember how you can use the word themes. Okay, you can use, is there any response there? Any comment? May unmute and talk. What? Hello? I thought you were saying something. Unmute.
No, sir.
All right, but are you following me? Reportedly, are you understanding what I'm saying? Right. So I'm saying, you're going to use. My mouse is misbehaving here. My mouse is misbehaving, but I'll put it into order. Okay. Here, I said you can use when you are doing poetry analysis. Right. You will hear people saying, let us use themes. That one is structure. The first one is going to be structure. So what is the structure of the poem? The other one is going to be imagery. I hope you're writing this down. The other one is going to be movement. Then you can have sound at the end. Structure, imagery, movement, and then sounds. Right. I hope you took note of that. So when you are looking at this structure of this poem, you start by looking at the stanza. I'm sure by now you understand that poetry is made up of stanzas. Right. So when I'm saying structure, you look at this, is this a stanza? How many stanzas are there? All right, let's quickly look at the first point of analysis, structure. So this one, it has got one stanza, this one, by one deal. Okay. It's just one stanza. I haven't started reading what is inside here. I've just looked at it. It's a single stanza. Okay, I'm like, okay, this poem is made up of a single stanza, right? So when I'm looking at it now, in terms of these lines, can you see the first verse? We call them the verse. So this is going to be verse 1, another verse, another verse. So all these are called verses in poetry. So now you start talking about verses. So you can be talking about the first stanza, maybe you refer to the second verse or third verse. All right, so now you can see it's just one stanza that is made up of how many verses? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But now you look at them now. Are these verses connected? Now, that is still the structure. Remember, structure is about a sentence structure. So how does it handle the question of a sentence structure? Because we are looking at it as a sentence now, for example. But you'll notice now you can't analyze this as separate from the images now, because it's all one thing. Now, inside this stanza now, and the verses, possibly that have got run-on lines. Can you see that this thing has got no punctuation? There's a reason why there's no punctuation. It's just like that. All right, I'll come to that one. Then the next one is I, which is imagery. So I'm now going to say imagery. what is imagery? So here, you're going to be looking at your figures of speech. Your figures of speech here. You know your figures of speech? That's where you start having your metaphors. If they are there, if you remember that metaphor, what is a metaphor? We'll just today, for the purposes of progress, we can just try to see if we can identify the most basic ones. So you know that you've got personification and you've got similes, etc. There is many more. It's not only these three, right? So you're now happy there. You said your structure. There was your stanzas. You analyzed the stanzas, the imageries, right? Now, you now try now to look at what I would call movement. But what you're looking at there now in terms of movement, you're looking at rhythm. Okay. That's your rhythm. Right. How, because when you're talking movement, when you move, you know, when something is moving, it maintains a certain metrical pattern. You know, you can feel that this poem is quick paced. This poem is slow. So here now, if it was a song, you'd have those beats. But in this case, you have syllables here. You know, we have got syllables. And these syllables, they can actually make the poem easy or quick to read. So if, for example, it's using monosyllables or many syllables, then you're going to end up saying, okay, this poem is using a few syllables, right? Maybe taking monosyllabic words. When I'm saying monosyllabic, I'm saying the poet might decide to use just one syllable. Monosyllabic. Okay, it's monosyllabic, meaning that is just one word. For example, the word, if you say time, right? Time is one word. So if the poet was to say, I want to buy time. I want to buy time. All those are monosyllabic words and is quick to read, right? The poem is quick, so the rhythm is relatively faster. The movement is fast when you are reading. Remember, I said it's meant to be read, to be recited, not to be read. Possibly that's why primary used to recite this. Okay, sometimes the poet might be using the opposite of monosyllabic, multi-syllable words. In other words, these are long syllable words. Then the rhythm is slow, right? If it's many syllable words, the rhythm is slow. So multi-syllabic words. Now, what do these multi-syllabic words do? They make the rhythm slow. Rhythm is slow. But why must be the rhythm slow? Okay, my spelling there. Why must be the rhythm slow? Because this has got to do with a tone. So you'll see now, in most monosyllabic words, quickness, this usually carries a pleasant tone, you know? If you're talking about tone, you say it carries a pleasant tone, or the mood tends to be happy. But now the opposite here happens. In a multisyllabic words, the rhythm is slow and the tone is troubled. Remember now, you don't have to just memorize this. You must check it in a specific poem So when we say poetic features, when you mention imagery, rhythm, you know, tone, you are on track. So that was your movement. Then the last one. Now that's where you look at sounds. Now when I'm talking about sounds, that's where you go for your rhyme scheme. Okay, rhyme scheme. Is there a clear rhyme scheme? Like in this case, the one that I've done with Shakespeare, there's a rhyme scheme there. Can you see that you have got the first line rhyming with the third, the second rhyming with that one? Even if you go down here, you would still see that shines is rhyming with partial. This is called partial rhyme. Declines, irons. You see, I was just on the last part. The word is declines, but it's rhyming there. Okay, then you see, so you can also be looking at internal rhyme. Internal rhyme. You see, good. So having said that, now when you look at this poem, you're going to say, okay, right, that poem, can I look at it quickly? What is it? Is it free verse? Yes. Okay, but before you go there, who is the poet? Please don't forget that this poem is written by a poet. Now, I'm going to come to this Wandile, this one. I'm saying, but who is Wandile? Right. So my first point is, who is the poet? First, when is he writing? When does he write? Right. So when does he write? That's my next question. When did he write the poem? And the last one, why? In fact, not last but not least, why has he written the poem? The last part is, how has he written the poem? Right. Let's see now. How has he written the poem? Is all these things that I've been talking about seems is how he has written it. But now, what is his subject? What is the subject of the poem? What is the subject of the poem? That is the most important thing. What is the theme? When I'm saying subject, I'm talking about theme. And now within this subject of the poem, I'm just going to say subject, then theme of the poem. Right. Then these poetic features, all these poetic features that I've been talking about, are there to develop a theme. So there is a theme that is being developed by the poetic features. Okay. Now, having said that, now let's read this poem and try to make sense of it. First, we will say, who is Wandile? We're going to check. Possibly, Wandile is a South African poet who stays, or maybe who wrote during, I don't know when this poem was written, but we can see, right, that this poem is written maybe post-independent South Africa. The choice of love and life, it's my choice. Okay, let's go. Walking down the street, people chatting, whispering. Who is this? It's my problem, not theirs. It's my choice, not theirs. I tell myself, it's my choice, the choice of love and life. Right, now, when we say analyze this poem, identify poetic features. Right, first you are going to say, what is the subject of the poem? Possibly, let me give you the chance to talk. You looked at that poem, I will start. Walking down the street, people chatting, whispering. Who is this? It's my problem, not theirs. It's my choice, not theirs. I tell myself, it's my choice, the choice of love and life. Okay, let's start now. We are analyzing that poem. All right, we know that Wandile is a South African poet. Let's leave it there. Possibly we just say he's writing around the democratic dispensation in South Africa, right? Why is he writing this poem? What is the theme of that poem? You may want to raise your hand and share. Let's talk now. Let's unpack the poem. What is the theme? You can write on the chat box as well. I'll read your responses there. If you are not in a position to talk, just write on the chat box. What is the theme of the poem? Right, a theme of the poem is not something that you're going to find in a paper. You must create it. What is the central idea in that poem? You heard me reading it. Okay, so the central idea is choices. I'm going to say it's choices, but I don't expect you to say it's choices if you see it different. And possibly he's reacting to people that keep on talking about him or her, because people ask. Possibly right now, as I'm delivering this tutorial, you are asking, who is this? You understand? So people want to know. People have questions. People have got issues. People respond in a different way. Then he responds now, he says he has got choices that he can make. So the theme here possibly could be about choices, right? That somebody is making about their own circumstances. Is there any reaction there about that poem? There is no tool of analysis that is written somewhere. You just look at this and you start dissecting it yourself. Be confident. Just don't doubt your abilities. Okay, so I've mentioned the poet here is, so the theme here is just asserting one's choices. So the poet is asserting a choice. Now, how then does this poet, because that's the theme now of making choices, how then does this poet develop his theme? Let's see now. So when we identify a poetic feature, we're going to mention its function. So walking down the street, people chatting, whispering. Who is this? So now, walking down the street, you know, when you are walking down the street, obviously that suggests liberalism. It suggests that you are a free person. You are not bound. You are just walking down the street. And these people are chatting. The word chatting suggests that it's a relaxed atmosphere. It's a mood. But as they chat, they are whispering. So in their whispers, you can see, who is this? Take note of the alliteration that I spoke about. Whisper. Who is this? Right. I'm going to highlight the alliteration, the repetition of the sound. Whisper. Who is this? That's beautiful. That's why I said poetry is the beauty of expression. When you are answering a question about poems, you just show that you appreciate the beauty of language. You mention that, okay, in that first stanza, on the second and third verses, there is an alliteration. In this case, is consonance, where the letter S is repeated. Why is it repeated? To emphasize the whispering. You can even hear when somebody says, "Sss." So there is nothing that which they are whispering, which this person cannot hear. But now, the poet goes on. It's my problem, not theirs. It's my choice, not theirs. Now, when you come to this, you know that when you are reading these poetic features, it's my problem. Look at that sentence. It's my choice.
It's my choice.
This is called, can you see now that he's playing with words? It's my problem. It's my choice. Subject, it's, which is pronoun. So this is called parallelism. Parallelism. What has he done there? He has repeated the same sentence structure across. Why is he doing this parallelism? Obviously, to emphasize his assertion that it's me there. And then now he goes on, not theirs, I tell myself. Right. You will now notice now that the poet here keeps on. Now, he is now using, for example, you see this word, my. My is we call it a possessive pronoun. Myself, possessive pronoun. And then he goes on there. You can see now that this poet is expressing, his own choices by using that possessive pronoun and is repeating it. So repetition is a poetic feature. So so when he's repeating this, he wants to emphasize that is his choice. These people that keep on talking about him or her should leave him alone. The choice of love and life. So when you look at the last one there, the choice of love and life, the choice of love. Oh, can you see that? Oh is now repeated here. And another O is repeated there. This is what I said is called alliteration, but now it's a repetition of a vowel sound, and we call that assonance. So you have analyzed this poem. When I started analyzing this poem, I did not know that I will analyze it like this. If I gave it to another student, they will analyze it differently. But anyway, I have said to you now, when you're analyzing a poem, show it, because we say the poem is a beauty of expression, a poem is a rhyme, a poem is that. Okay, so when you are looking at this poem now, you would notice that there's an absence of all these things that I was talking about. Let's see, is there rhyme here at the end? There's no rhyme at the end, but there's internal rhyme. See, the repetition, internal rhyme. Okay, and why is this poem very short? You can now decide to give it a reason. Okay, it's a matter of fact. The poet doesn't want to keep on writing a lot of things. The poet loves his life. So if he says it's a choice of love and life, the poet has decided this is me and I like myself as I am. So no one defines me. I am myself. Whosoever whispers about who I am, possibly what I'm wearing, my identity, whether they've got issues with my tastes, whatever is personal. And the poet is just asserting that. And Wandile has done that very well. Comments and feedback, ladies and gentlemen. I have done the analysis for you. In our next tutorial, you will do the analysis. I'm not allowed to be even doing this and unpacking it. You need to unpack it yourself. Right. The person that asked this one for, are you answered there? If I may ask, are you answered? Who asked there? Let me just go back and check your names. Are we fine in that regard? Or there are questions there on poetry analysis? I was looking at a 3-verse poem, which is usually written by African writers. Comments, discussions, insights, additions are welcome. I'm listening.
Yeah, I understand now so far. What?
You notice that it's not something that can be crammed, where you cram and you just walk around. You must see things, see things in poetry, see words, hear words in a peculiar way. A word must come to you, it must strike you, and read it internally but loudly. I repeated that these things were meant to be performed, not to be read. Okay, I hear you. I hear you, Tabitha. Any other contribution there? Anybody that feels like they've seen something there? Because you'll start developing this confidence with practice. Any further insights? Basically, what I did was to define literature, and then when I defined literature, I just said it's a criticism of life. Different definitions of literature are there. Other people can say it's novels, it's plays, it's drama, it's poetry. I started by saying it's oracy. I said literature is what is spoken, but it has to be written. So if we normally say certain things, like we have got praise songs, praise songs for our kings. We take all those praise songs and we change them and we make them literature. They were once orature, but now they are literature. A short story is what was told around a fireplace, right? You know that there's stories that are called legends, fables, etc. Those are stories that are told to young children, but they can be written for you as university students to start coming up and unpacking. But today I'm not on a short story because we decided to say our focus is on poetry. And I just want us to be very poetic today. Poetic means we analyze things from a poetic point of view. I'm interested in your responses. Poetry is a response. You remember in one of my definitions I should have mentioned that poetry is a patterned response to life. So you must have a clear pattern of response where you start by saying, I'm responding to a poetry. What is the theme? You write the theme, right? Who is the poet here? You quickly look at the poet. If this person was writing during apartheid era, you can quickly see that this poet is writing in a context of apartheid, and possibly the subject is about lack of freedom and colonial and apartheid injustices. Everything is there. But now, if they are writing in a democratic South Africa, you can also sense that this is written in a different time zone. Now, the poet also has got a subject, possibly. There's always an audience for a poet. Who are the audience? But how does the poet play with the words, to convince or to entertain? Sometimes the poet just wants you to laugh, just to entertain you. Sometimes you want to take it too hard upon yourselves because you must identify a simile. No, enjoy, interpret. Remember, the poetry is to be interpreted. That one is my interpretation. Sometimes I might ask you to give me your interpretation. Right, more voices. Let's talk.
Sir, I would like to ask something again. Is it a good or a bad thing before analyzing a poem to check out the background about the poet, or yeah?
It is a good idea to check the background because that will give you that hint of who the poet is and what his style or her style is. You might be quick to detect that this poet is a blank verse poet. This is a free verse poet. This is a rhyme scheme a poet. Like if you were to read Shakespeare, for example, the one that I just gave you there, that one that says, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? You'd certainly see that, okay, I mean, you need to take, this is Shakespeare. When was he writing, right? Who was he writing for? But now look, all his works, if it is a sonnet, because you quickly pick that Shakespeare is a writer of various sonnets. A sonnet is a 14-lined poem, right, that has got certain divisions in it, and it ends with 2 short lines that are rhyming, which you call rhyming couplets. So when you are reading that background about a poet, they tend to get into the style of the poet. They also tend to give you a brief description of his themes, issues that he deals with. And sometimes when you're looking at style, they'll quickly tell you he tends to put a bit of irony. He tends to put a bit of humor. He tends to put a bit of humor, of satire. These words that I'm talking about, they are literary or poetic devices. Humor is a poetic device. Satire, you have to study all those in your text. Yes, but please do not spend time writing about the poet. Here you must go to the theme. If you are to analyze poetic features, brief, 1 sentence or 2, the theme is about. You see, I just said for that one, the theme is asserting choices. That was my interpretation. So it's just one line. Then who is Wandile? I can just look at the poet and say Wandile is a South African writer, of course, writing maybe in the post-independent South Africa. Done. That's all. That's all. But if I'm going to say he's an apartheid poet, then I would indicate now then say his writing and his style is influenced by his reaction to apartheid brutalities. Now, let me tell you now, with African poetry, you know, there's nothing to smile about. There's no rhyme. There's nothing beautiful about. You see, with Shakespeare, he will just start with these syllables, make sure every line has got, okay, there's something I'll show you there about the syllables. But at the end, he will just be rhyming his words. Everything is about love. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art lovely, etc., etc. During apartheid, there was nothing called love. People just wrote what they thought. They just wrote their own sentences. So art sometimes can imitate a bad reality. The fact that they are playing off grammatical rules or ignoring certain restraints that are related to poetry is a symbol. When we talk about symbolism, we're saying these are symbols. They symbolize, you know, a disordered situation that the poet is in. So if the poet is not happy, the mood is not happy, the poet will write long sentences and the rhythm becomes slow and troubled because they are troubled. There is nothing to write about. There is no freedom. There is no laughter. So there is nothing comic to celebrate. I shouldn't talk a lot. I'm not allowed. Please comment. Then we go to the next aspect. Because I said we're going to be looking at poetry. If there is a poem that you have in the study guide, I asked that some of you, you know what, because I'm trying to look at the links here. One of you, if you have my email address, I'm not sure if you have already sent your study guide. Please send that study guide through. When I'm teaching you here, I'm just general. I'm preparing you. The study guide is one of my documents. I'm not worried 100% about the study guide. No, I'm worried 100% about how you take things, how you respond to this text that is in front of you, something like that. So we will, of course, in future go to the study guide, but remember, you are a literature student, you will explore, you will read more, you will analyze a lot and give your own response. What has been cited by Queen Promise is different from what Tabang, Constance, or Rantau would give. When we are marking your work, we don't want to see an essay that keeps on coming. There are people buying essays here, and it's embarrassing, literally embarrassing. How would you, supposing you are looking at this poem that I just looked at, and then now you go and copy my words, and then you want to make them your own. You can make your own words, right? You can make your own response to anything that is poetic around you. Okay, let's just be general now. What is poetic around us? Now let's leave the written poetry. What is poetic around us in our environment? I know some of you listen to music, isn't it? You like to listen. I don't know whether I'm talking to the right audience, but some of you like listening to lyrics of a song. That song that carries you with your emotions. When you read that song, you even lift your hands because it carries certain connotations. It carries certain associations. You love the song so much. It is emotive. It takes your emotions. But how does it take your emotions? It's because of the words that song is using. I don't know the music that you listen to, but all of us at some point are taken by music, particularly the lyrics of a song. Because, you are not talking, I keep on talking. I'm like a radio. One day I'll just also leave my radio talking here. Then you'll see that now everything is recorded. It's going to be boring to you because we need that interface. So our music is poetry. The words that come from that song could be what you call diction. You know, in poetry, we have diction. Can somebody define diction for me?
Is the choice of words in a piece of writing.
Yes. Correct. The choice of words. So poets choose their words carefully, and they know which words would have a more powerful effect than others. So they craft their words in such a way that they would literally create an emotion, because they want you to end up developing certain emotions. So you take those words. Okay, just start from your songs. If you don't like poetry, just start from your favorite song. Look at what is poetic there. You might see repetition. You know, musicians will keep on repeating this line. They repeat it there. They repeat it there. Then that repetition starts carrying you. Then, because this thing keeps on coming at a regular intervals, it creates what you call a rhythm. That rhythm is what makes you now start developing, you know, that patent reaction or response to what you are listening to. Because you know that this word will keep on being repeated here. It was repeated. This idea has been said there. It will be emphasized here. This thing has been mentioned there. I don't know how to express it, but it's beautiful when you appreciate it. Another definition for poetry is that poetry is appreciation of the use of language. I know sometimes it's very difficult when you read, you don't understand, but try to read it aloud before you even start answering questions for the assignment. Take it, you know, to another person, say, read this poem aloud. Then highlight those key words that you think you do not understand. Give them their contextual meaning. Because the meaning sometimes is not about a dictionary. In poetry, meaning changes totally. Poets have what you call a poetic license. What is a poetic license? They are allowed to play with grammatical rules. They are allowed to change a word or to form a new word, something that is out of the ordinary, so that it can be striking. Okay, I know the topic might be too long. I have just done an analysis of a poem. So, what I'm expecting you to do when you are asked to analyze any poem, you're going to be open-minded. Now I want to go to this poem now that I chose. This is Shakespeare's sonnet. Okay, when I'm saying sonnet, I could have, let's see, because of the slides here, I'm trying to make it much bigger, but it's a 14-line poem. But I'll show you something here. You'll see that this is saying, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. If you look at this first verse, which has got a rhyming word at the end, and you look at this second one, and then you check the number of syllables, you would notice that there are 10 syllables here. Because shall is a syllable, one syllable, shall. So when you say syllable, it's what you say. It's like it's a word that you say and it doesn't shift to another sound. Like you say mother. Mother is 2 syllables. So it's ma and the. So it's 2 syllables. So here, shall is 1 syllable. That a syllable is a sound. Shall. It's usually having 1 vowel. So shall. I, which is another syllable. Come. Pair, another syllable. Thee, another syllable. To, another syllable. Another syllable. Some must, stay. So summer stay. So if you look at that entire line is 10 syllables. Thou art, this is all 10 syllables until the end. And then is rhymed here. Okay, now that is style. All this is part of style. Then you ask, if he says, shall I compare thee to a summer stay? What is that? It's a question. This is a question. What type of a question is that?
Is it not a rhetorical question?
Well done, well done. You see, you are such, you see, the moment you say rhetorical question, your marker goes there and puts a tick. But don't just say it's a rhetorical question. You must identify the feature. This is called a feature, a poetic feature. So you go, it's a rhetorical question, yes? It's found in a poem. So it's poetic. So sometimes some questions can function in a poetic way. It's a rhetorical question. Why has it been put? So in other words, now you start justifying what is the purpose of that rhetorical question. And lastly, how effective is it? So, you know, when you are doing this poetry, if you don't address those questions, or those dimensions, you're not winning. If you just say there's a rhetorical question and you leave it there, no mark. You can just put 1 mark, but you are failing. But if you say there's a rhetorical question, why has Shakespeare asked? Who is Shakespeare referring to here? If I may ask, who is he referring to in this poem? Shall I compare thee? Who is he referring to? Right, obviously it's his loved ones. So this is a rhetorical question. So what is the function of that rhetorical question now? You can say it's just there to engage the reader or the listener, even to appeal to the listener. Sometimes our rhetorical questions are made to appeal to our emotions. Okay, so he has asked that. How effective is it? You know, it starts creating that curiosity. Obviously, from the person that is listening, they start feeling curious. This person wants to compare me to a summer's day. You know, a summer's day is different from a winter's day. What is a summer's day like? If it's a day that is or that comes on summer, it's such a good day, filled with warmth. So we come to words like symbols, symbolism. So when I'm saying symbolism, the word summer, summer's day, that summer carries symbols of warmth, symbols of affection. So this is all about a description or an address to somebody that he loves so much and is beaming that person with all these positive words of adoration and admiration. Let me not talk a lot. You keep you because you are not talking, and I'll be guilty of talking a lot. Let's talk together. Okay. What other language feature do you see in that poem? Let's look at it. What other language feature or poetic feature? Let's talk about poetic features. I hope you saw assonance. Thou art lovely and more temperate. Okay, thou art lovely and more temperate. You can see rough winds do shake the darling parts of me. There is that li sound repeated in close succession. Lovely, darling. I hope you see that. All these, we are taking them to sort of cluster together. But all these words, of course, the lovely, darling, they are all adding to a positive emotion of love. The word thou, what does it suggest as part of diction? Can somebody comment there? Why is the poet saying thou instead of saying you are lovely? Thou art lovely. What is the difference between saying you are lovely and thou art lovely? Okay, so when you say you are lovely, sometimes, you know, you are reducing that person. There is less reverence. You are not elevating that person to an esteemed and high status. You're making them ordinary. But when you say thou, you know, but of course, this is old language Shakespeare was using. But of course, in today's word, we do in our Lord's Prayer and say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy, thou. Those words were words that were given divinity. You know, divinity means something is so divine and holy and sacred and pure. So if you are going to address somebody in that way, you are suggesting that they exude all qualities of beauty and elegance and chastity or purity. Rough winds. I don't know, I'm not going to go on here, but you can see all these. Okay, sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines. What is this eye of heaven? Come, guys. No, this one you're going to tell me, man. He's saying he's going to compare this to a summer's day. But on that day, the eye of heaven shines. What is that? What is this eye of heaven that shines?
The sun.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Now, you see, he has decided to say the sun, but he doesn't want to use the word sun. You see, the choice of words. If you say the eye of heaven, he is also giving the sun that shines during summer, divine and heavenly attributes. Heaven is such a wonderful place. I don't know, those that are Christians, you have been told about that wonderful place. That is no description. So Shakespeare now wants to bring all these images of beauty, all these images of heavenliness into this woman that he loves so much. But he says sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines. You see, he's just deciding to put it in polite words that sometimes during summer, the sun is a bit hot. Then he will go on now and apply it to the description of his love. You see, poetry, poetry, when you start talking about it, you'll never stop. I wonder how you can get into exam room and you've got nothing to write. But ladies and gentlemen, you made me talk the whole session. I'm not allowed to talk and preach. You know, I went through my undergraduate studies in poetry, and at some point I was not very confident. When I started gaining confidence, one day when we were just about to write an exam, I said to myself, if my grandma sat with me and told me a story, if my grandpa set me around a fireplace and my mother and my father and everybody else in my community were storytellers, there is no way I'm going to fail to write something about a novel. That thing just requires me to assert myself and to give my analysis of the themes that are in the novel and my own personal response. It wants my rubber stamp. So there are no right or wrong answers in literature. Today, I want to tell you that there are no right or wrong answers in literature, but they are correct thought processes. And there is only one response, and that is your response. And that response is supported by the relevant textual or literary or poetic features which you identify. May you find it in you to develop confidence in literature. Read widely. If it's poetry, take one poem at a time. Go online, just do a bit of research about the poet. Don't just get there and start copying everything that Spark Notes is giving you. Just allow yourself to respond. Give it your own feeling, give it your own thumb. As a marker who is marking your work, we can tell that this is an original work and the student has asserted herself. This thing has not been copied and pasted. So you will enjoy our journey through poetry. We will know that with poetry, it's all enjoyment. It's all personal response. So in our next analysis, if I give you a poem, please just do themes. I spoke about themes today as a way of doing it, which is structure, imagery, movement, and sound. Your structure, you're looking at your stanzas. How are these stanzas? Are there too many stanzas? Are there run-on lines moving from one point to another? You're also looking at these sentences themselves. Are they correctly punctuated? Sometimes lack of punctuation says something. Sometimes a poet would even put a capital letter. That is emphasis. Also read something on poetry, please. If you're not confident, just buy a poetry a guideline and just read at least 2 poetry guidelines. And then when you read a poem, ask yourself, how does the poet arouse my emotions? Which images is he using? I think I may take a compliment or a question before we conclude today's session. Please go and study your module. Study your module, read everything in the module. Now, when we meet next time, you should have gone through everything. Just read what your module wants you to do, because next time I'll be concentrating on the thrust of the module so that you develop skills that are relevant to your modules. You may raise your hand and give a question, a compliment, a projection, just 2 minutes, then we call it a night. In the absence of question, oh yes. No, Kululego. Thank you, I'm listening.
I think we're gonna be well prepared next time. So sorry that we didn't participate because we were not prepared. Just like I said, Ms. Tabitha just said, Nonku joining the class now. So I didn't know about this class. So next time when we know about the topic, we'll come prepared and participate.
It's fine. And that's what I wish to hear, Nonkululego. I really appreciate your remarks. Thank you very much. Right? Any other person? Let's go to the module. Let's go and look at what we need to do. Read it. In our next tutorial, we will be focusing on that, but I'll be giving you questions here and there to practice. We will be discussing. Maybe I will be assigning some of you to take certain portions of the discussion and others also responding in that regard. Remember, there is also one-on-one sessions. If there's something that you do not understand and you want a one-on-one session, you arrange with Mrs. Mashiane. She's going to arrange that you are given a one-on-one specified session for you, so that you are assisted at an individual level. But I know today's session laid the foundation. We will keep on developing. Please keep attending these sessions. Try to attend. It makes a difference. That having said, may God bless you.